I'm Myriam.
And I'm Elyse. Two friends bound by the love of books.
Taking on the world one chapter at a time. This is the Book Bound Besties podcast. Hey, Book Bound Besties! Welcome to episode 2 of season 3 of the Book Bound Besties podcast, where we dive deep into your favorite books, have unhinged chats, and Elyse theorizes about what's to come because she has not read the whole book yet. Today, we're talking about From Blood and Ash, chapters 5 to 8. If you want any more Book Bound Besties content, we encourage you to follow us on TikTok and Instagram, where we post funny clips from our episodes, silly videos, and our unhinged book reviews. And also, we would really, really appreciate it, as always, I know I say this every week, for you to leave us a review, a written review on Apple Podcasts, regardless of where you listen. It really, really helps push our episodes through the algorithm and expose us to more potential besties.
Yeah.
Just a little content warning for today. From Blood and Ash is not for little ears, so do with that what you will. Unless they are little canine ears, then it's fine.
They can't tell.
Exactly. Before we jump into this week's episode, I have been under the weather, so Elyse and I have not chatted as much as we usually do. And actually, something so funny happened this morning. Nicole Q, who is one of our very good friends and very loyal listeners, sends me a text saying that she finished ACOWAR. So spoiler for ACOWAR, that whole series. And she's like, I was going insane when Reese died, and the only thing that kept me sane was knowing that you love this series, and there's no way you would have loved this series if he actually died.
I love that.
And I was like, I love how you just know me so well.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I've like infiltrated her thinking.
That's so funny. Someone commented on the video that, the mental breakdown video that we did, saying she finished, sometime this week, she finished ACOWAR and, oh man, what was the other one? Assassin's Blade in the same day, like that day.
Oh boy.
I was like, you were having the worst day
Yeah,
ever.
the emotional trauma.
Yeah. So, yeah. Because she didn't have that little voice inside her head saying, well, if Myriam likes it. That's so
I guess
funny.
we need to spread the good word of Myriam's standard of book. I don't know.
That's so funny. I actually wanted to tell you, I had a friend from high school reach out who we were super good friends in high school, and we lost touch just after high school, as you do when you go to college, different schools, whatever. And in high school, we were like Twilight besties. Like we were obsessed with Twilight. We went to the midnight releases of the books together. We went to the movies, like everything. And she found our book page, like Book Bound Besties, and wrote to me and was like, oh my God, this is so cool, blah, blah, blah. And she hasn't read ACOTAR or anything, but the other day,
my goodness,
she asked me about ACOTAR, and she's like, what is it that you like about it? And I was just telling her, I'm like, oh, the adventure's so good. Each book is so unique. It goes on its own journey, and the characters you meet are just the best band of characters. That for me is the heart of the story. You just fall in love with these characters so hard. And she's like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll read it, whatever. And then yesterday she sent me a picture of her holding the book, and she's going on the journey. And I got so excited because, I literally haven't spoken to this girl for almost 15 years now. And ACOTAR has, somehow brought us back together, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Little does she know, she has just embarked on a 16-book journey.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, she's a teacher. She's going to love it.
For sure.
She's just going to eat it up.
Yeah, totally. That's so funny. I actually just finished a series. So if you follow us on Instagram, what we do at the end of every month is we do a roundup of the books that we read, and we give our reviews and our thoughts on the book. You may see that I read the Caraval series, and I didn't love it, but I was told that you really had to read it in order to read Once Upon a Broken Heart, which is the second series that builds on primarily one character from Caraval. So I did. Finished Caraval, didn't love it, read Once Upon a Broken Heart, finished it yesterday, liked it better.
Okay.
Still didn't love it.
Okay.
And everyone says that the second book, which is, I believe, A Ballad of Never Endings or something like that, I inhaled these books because everyone kept saying like they're so good, and particularly the second is so amazing and whimsical and this and that. So I'm just plowing through trying to get to that point, and I never got there.
That sucks.
It was a little bit disappointing. The book had a lot of potential. Honestly, I'm not sure if it's because it was YA that it just didn't, you know, hit a chord, strike a chord.
Yeah, but you know, there are some YAs that are great. So
yeah,
even reading as an adult, like, so I don't think that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was left wanting. The book was interesting. The plot and the premise was interesting. But there was a little bit something missing. And I'm not sure if it's because we've been reading all this fantasy that is more complex and more nuanced. And honestly, I have such a hard time putting into words or putting my finger on exactly what I didn't love. I won't say I actively dislike. So Caraval, I didn't really like. The first book, I actively hated, I'll be honest. The characters were super unlikable. Then it got better over time, and I was like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. It's getting a little bit better, but like still, I was like, meh, whatever. But what's frustrating to me is I can understand why people like these books so much because the premise is so interesting. And the concepts and the magic system, like everything has so much potential. And I just don't know why I didn't love it. And it makes me so upset.
I don't know. I haven't read it. I had read reviews and they were very mixed, and I was like, meh. Like it wasn't at the top of my priority list. So but now that you've read them, I don't think I will, like based on your reaction. But it could just be, like you said, we've read or are reading so many great fantasy books after a while. Like if it doesn't hit at the same level, it just becomes stale, right?
Maybe. Like I will say, for example, earlier in the summer, I read Powerless. Well, I listened to the audiobook, which was delightful. And Powerless, I at first was like, oh, I don't really like this because it was really reminiscent of Throne of Glass and Hunger Games. And as the story progressed, I was like, oh no, this is actually kind of cool. I really like this. And I just finished Reckless, which I loved. But that was YA, and I liked it. So I don't know. Stay tuned. I have to find a new series that I'm going to jump into. I'm thinking of doing Serpents in the Wings of Night.
Okay.
Which I've heard
good things.
Really good things about. I've heard that a lot of people say it is the closest they felt to ACOTAR and Fourth Wing. So we shall see. Okay. Other than that, I really want to read Guild.
Also heard good things.
I've heard good things about that too. Anyway, it's not as though I have an embarrassment of riches in terms of potential choices of what to read next. I just need to make the decision.
Yeah. Which can be hard because you want to make the right decision and you don't want to be disappointed, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to get through all of them. I'm a freaking machine when it comes to reading, but yeah, for sure.
It's funny. I am halfway through Queen of Shadows.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I know.
Oh, man. Oh, Heir of Fire was fantastic, but I think I might be liking Queen of Shadows more. I think I'm like on a lot more of like this roller coaster, and there's just so many like little things that happen and you're just like, oh my god, and it's so good. And I'm only halfway through. So.
Yeah. A lot of people say it's their favorite.
Yeah. Which one's your favorite?
Kingdom of Ash.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
I'm not ready.
I just touched me deep in my soul.
Yeah.
I loved it.
But as I'm like now just past the halfway point, I'm like, I have to make the decision about, do I tandem? Do I not tandem?
Yes, you tandem.
But I've heard a lot of people say don't.
Trust me. I got you into this mess.
True. Anyway.
No, honestly, I think there's no right or wrong way of enjoying these books, whether you tandem, whether you don't tandem.
The argument for the not tandem that actually made sense to me was that they were saying, and I don't know which book's which, one of them is a lot slower paced and emotional, and one of them is a lot more things happen. So breaking up the story like that made the slower paced one less, like you just didn't feel it and get into the emotions of it as well as reading it on its own. Interesting. Which I thought was interesting.
Okay. Listen, I did the tandem for my first read and I did the not tandem for my second read. What you're saying is true. One is definitely more action-packed than the other. I don't think the tandem read took away from it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still have half a book to get through. So anyway, are we ready to jump back into From Blood and Ash?
Yes. Okay. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay, besties, as we did last week, as we're doing for this series, we are doing our quick little world building segment, and we're going to break it down according to what we learned in the chapters that Elyse covered and the ones I covered. So just to reiterate, I've been covering the odd numbered chapters and Elyse has been covering the even numbered chapters. So one of the things that we learned this week was a little bit more about the geography of Macedonia. And so we learned about the Lower Ward, which is a part of the city where Marlowe and Ridley, the two cursed people, lived. And we also discover Wisher's Grove, which is a border essentially between where the rich live and the poor live. It is a heavily wooded area that used to be filled with wildlife, but no longer is. And it runs all the way into the inner walls of Castle Tierman. Poppy asks us, is it haunted? Is it not? Doesn't really matter, because this is how our sneaky sneaks leave the castle undetected, because the grove and the garden of the castle are connected by this like wall that has holes in it, which ends up, or maybe not holes, but cracks, that ends up coming to play later on in this week's episode. So that's that was actually pretty much the only world building. I have a few extra comments for the Ascended that you covered and the Atlanteans.
Yeah. I mean, my chapters had a bit more.
Yeah, your chapters definitely had more world building. So off to you, Elyse.
So the next thing, or next place we here touched upon is Radiant Row, which is a nickname given to the row of homes closest to the castle and to Wisher's Grove Park. So it's these opulent houses, and they're mostly owned by the Ascended, which kind of just like made me think of like New York City, like all the rich homes are right on the park, you know?
Yeah.
It kind of gave me that vibe. Although I don't actually picture Macedonia like New York City.
No, I don't really know how I picture it. I kind of picture it, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I kind of picture it where like the castle is like at the top of a hill, and we do not know the topography of the city, but I feel like the castle is like on the top of the hill, and then you got Radiant Row, then you've got the Lower Ward, and then you've got the water. And I just feel like the further you get from the castle, the more, I mean, it's a fact, the more decrepit and gross the city gets.
That makes sense.
That's kind of how I see it.
I did picture, I don't know why, I pictured Wisher's Grove like kind of coming out from the castle, so cutting down into the city.
Okay.
And having houses on either side.
Of the grove?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then eventually it ends, and then, like you said, like all the cheap side is down there. But it's funny because I found myself wanting a map this week because I read about a new place, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to go check the map. And then I was like, there's no map.
Yeah, there's no map.
Which is like...
We've been spoiled.
We've been very spoiled with maps. And I do enjoy flipping back to the map, like especially when you're visiting a new place. You're just like, oh, where are they compared to where it started?
And besties, that is where we are so different, because I look at the map, I'm like, okay, cool. Never refer back to it again. Never.
I like a map. Anyway, the other place that is mentioned in these chunk of chapters is the Undying Hills. So at the foot of these hills is the temple of, bear with me now, Rarhar.
Who? I have never heard of this god.
Well, then you didn't read the chapters, did you?
What chapter is this in?
In my last one, 8. I wouldn't make it up.
No, obviously you wouldn't. Obviously not.
Obviously.
Rahar, not Rarhar.
Okay, spelled it wrong.
Yeah, okay.
So the last place that we touch upon is the Undying Hills. At the foot of them is the temple of Rahar, the eternal god, and the temple of Ione, who is the goddess of rebirth. This is where Macedonian funerals are held.
So I pushed back a little bit on Elyse because I'd never heard, there was a typo in our notes, and it's because what you don't know is the prequel series, we meet
Gods.
Oh. So I was like, who the heck is Rarhar?
You couldn't figure it out?
No, there's a lot of them, okay? There's a lot of characters. This poor little brain.
Okay.
It contains a lot of information.
That's really funny.
Not everything.
It's a lot of world building.
It is
That's
a
why
lot
we
of world
have
building.
our segment.
Yeah. I really hope, besties, that you find this helpful and useful. I know particularly for Elyse last week, I think it was really helpful for you.
You know what I'm actually enjoying is having all our world building notes together, and I could actually go back and refer if there's something I'm not sure of.
Yeah.
So I'm using it as a great tool. I don't know how our besties feel. But
please let us know because I think it's great, but I am biased. Proceed.
creatures.
Yes.
/ types of people. So we learn a little bit more about the Ascended.
Yeah. So one of the things that we learned about them in my chapter is that their eyes are so dark that their pupils aren't visible regardless of their eye color pre-ascension.
Which are creepy.
Yeah.
I just like black hole eyes are scary.
Yeah. They're also incredibly fast. That's what we learned in my chapter. What did we learn in yours?
They stop aging once blessed by the gods, and they can't bear children, which I was like, huh. We are also introduced to a new class, I guess, of person.
Yeah. A new species?
Yeah. New species. The Atlanteans. So I'm assuming that was one of the ones that she got flack for naming, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't
because
mind.
it sounds like Atlantis.
Yeah.
Whatever.
My brain went to Atlanta, though, which is funny.
Well, it's
but-
because if you think about it, after the War of Two Kings,
Yeah,
the Atlantean kingdom like disappeared,
Yes.
blah, blah, blah. So it's like Atlantis, the city that lost city, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. Anyway, okay.
Atlanteans. So they could leave vampire-like bites from their 2 elongated canines, because we end up finding some of those in the next few chapters. They are able to kill without mess. So when they kill, there is no blood. They could just kill, and I would assume drink all the blood, and that is why there is no blood left behind. They look like mortals, so they're hard to detect. We learn a little bit about when they turn. So
It's actually when they reach maturity.
okay.
So they've been Atlanteans their whole life, but when they reach 19 to 21, this is like their version of puberty.
Yeah.
So they're not turning.
Well, they're becoming more like creature things. Like they're not drinking blood pre this, right?
Right.
That's what I meant by turn.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm very nitpicky.
It's okay. Okay, so between the ages of 19 and 21, they have an increase of strength and they heal fast. We also learned they could be bound to Wolven, but not much is known about what that bond is. There's apparently some ceremony that could bind them. We don't know more info on that yet. During that same window, they start to thirst for blood and continue to do so. Basically, anyway, all these things, it's very vampire. It's a vampire. It's the same creature. But anyway, I have yet to see anything that makes them different from a vampire based on this list. Their aging is slowed, and they actually give us a metric that 1 year to a mortal is 3 decades to an Atlantean. They don't live forever, but they live really, really long.
Yeah, I think one of the stats in the book is like the oldest Atlantean they had on record was like 2,700 years old or something like that.
Exactly. And they could pass the curse on and create Craven through a poisonous kiss, therefore presumably biting their neck and poisoning them again, like a vampire.
I'm not saying anything.
I know. I just feel like if she's not calling them vampires, there must be something that makes them not vampires. But this list tracks as a vampire, you know? That's all I'm saying. We also learn a tiny little bit about the Wolven. They too can be mistaken for mortals, and they are thought to be extinct. In the book, it says they're extinct. I chose to write thought to be extinct because I felt like there's no point in introducing this creature if they are actually extinct and not part of the book.
Reading comprehension for Elyse? Tick.
For good. For good. Yeah, so that's basically all the new things we learned about the world. Which
Awesome.
is very exciting. I said before we hit record, I loved this set of chapters. I really enjoyed it. It was very exciting. The world, the things that we're learning was exciting and also easier to follow. I don't know if I was just in a better headspace. Like I felt like it rolled out well.
Yeah, I think maybe because you've now spent a few chapters getting to know the characters, getting to know the world, it's not as overwhelming. Also, we already learned a little bit about Ascended. We already learned a little bit about Atlanteans. We already learned a little bit about Wolven. We already learned a little bit about the geography. So the way that she's layering on the additional details of the world building makes it really digestible. So I can understand how you would appreciate it better now.
Yeah.
I also think the story is starting to pick up. We can say that the triggering event occurred this week.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Not that death is exciting, but in a book.
All right, you want to do the synopsis for chapter 5?
Yes, I do. Victor and Poppy have a hard discussion about her upcoming ascension. Victor seeing her truths better than she can. Then, On her evening stroll, Poppy runs into the depraved Lord Mazine, too eager to abuse his power. Luckily, or not so luckily, Poppy is saved by a scream. A woman's body is found dead in the castle. The ick.
Yeah.
In this chapter.
Oh, and it's only going to continue ramping up.
I could tell because of the way she talks about like the Duke and sorry guys, I might make that noise a couple times. I know it's not fun to hear, but it's how I feel.
So, like you said in your synopsis, Poppy and Victor leave Agnes and her dead would-have-been Craven husband. And the relief I felt when we learned that the kid wasn't there, I don't think I could have stomached a baby Craven. It's giving that scene in Breaking Dawn where they have like the baby vampire. They explain why baby vampires are like not allowed. Like the scene was like of a little kid in a village and there was just like piles of bodies. There you go. I made that sound too.
Yeah. Have you ever watched or read Interview with a Vampire?
No.
Okay. So one of the main characters, Claudia, is a little girl.
That's terrifying.
So she was turned as a child, but she's lived for so long
But how young is she?
I'm 10.
Okay, but at 10, you can learn.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is you live through her frustrations of having all this knowledge and world experience, but being stuck in a child's body. So she has the mentality of an adult, but she's stuck in a child's body, so she can't live as an adult.
Got it.
Like, she's just angry. Like, I can't even, like it truly is, I mean, you could look at all vampirism as a curse, but, like, it's almost like you can't live if you're cursed as a child. Like, it's just, like, really,
like,
really
you can't
sad.
mature and, like, fall in love.
Well,
and
exactly.
Whatever.
And she's just, like, throwing fits, but, like, I'm like, yeah, I would too, girl. Like,
yeah. I just was saying at 10, you do have a level of critical thinking that you don't at, like, 3.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
So after they leave Agnes and Marlowe, they have to go check on the other guy, Ridley, who was also cursed at the same time. Thankfully, he was already dead. Horrifyingly, it was his father who had to do it, which I just think is so sad. I cannot imagine the strength and mercy it would have taken that father to do that for his son. It's just so sad.
I just made a quick note in this moment. Like, Poppy says that she didn't go talk to the dad, Victor did, and she was like grateful for it because she wouldn't have been able to help herself but like want to help him. And I just thought this was such a nice little sense of like who she is as a character, because we're still getting to know her. We don't know her really well, but again, in this moment, like, we just saw her desire, and we continue to see her desire to want to alleviate people of their pain and wanting to help people. And it kind of like gave Violet a little bit, Violet Sorrengail, like the desire to always want to help and like care for others. And
I could see that. Anyway, now they're heading back to the castle through Wisher's Grove, and Victor starts his lecture. He's concerned that Poppy's identity is going to be revealed, along with the fact that she has a gift and that she's been using it. And that's when we learn that the use of her gift comes with these headaches. And Victor tries to sympathize with her, the need that she has to help, by bringing up her parents' death. So we know that as a child, she went through a really traumatic event that had to do with a Craven. We don't really know anything else. And we now know that her parents were casualties in this traumatic event. We're gonna learn more and more about this event literally through the whole series. Things come to light. It's really wild how JLA, I can't even say that she's leaving us breadcrumbs. She's feeding us morsels of this bigger situation that you will literally never see coming.
okay, exciting.
Yeah. And this Craven attack that Poppy goes through as a child is kind of, I would say that, how can I put this? The entire plot of this series and Flesh and Fire, I might be exaggerating by saying the entire plot, but like a large portion or a large facet of it revolves around the Craven attack, because the more we learn about the Craven attack, the more we learn about the world, the more we learn about the like big bad, the more we learn about everything.
Alrighty then.
I'm just trying to find a way to like express myself without really like giving too much away, but also by kind of highlighting the importance of this Craven attack, because you're going to keep learning things.
Okay, so I will make sure to store everything I learned about it.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the lecture in Wisher's Grove. Victor also reprimands Poppy's recklessness, despite being the one who taught her everything she knows. And then he hits the nail on the head. He thinks that everything she's doing, the use of her gift, the potential exposure of her identity is because she wants to be caught and wants to be found unworthy. And there's some sort of, insinuation that she doesn't want to be caught because of the Duke's punishments, which are apparently so bad that Victor at one point had to help her walk back to her room. But Victor knows Poppy well enough to know that not only does she want to be found unworthy, she's actually afraid of her ascension. And I just kind of said to myself, like, is this guy in her head? Because these are thoughts that she had last episode. She had an entire interior monologue about about wanting to be found unworthy and being afraid of ascending. She doesn't know what her ascension is going to entail and what her life is going to be like after and what she's going to be like after. I mean, we really have no idea. So I just thought it was kind of cool that this man who is her father figure, who has been her father figure since her parents have passed away, knows her so well.
Yeah.
I just love that.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, Big V, as I call him, is a no bullshit sort of dad because he lays down the law for Poppy. She is ascending no matter what, no ifs, ands, or buts. So she better get used to it.
I did find it interesting, though, that, like, he was so sure she will successfully ascend. Like, he seemed so, he's like, it doesn't matter what's happened and what you've done, like, you are going to ascend. Like, that is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's because her position is just so important. She is the maiden. She's the first maiden. So, like, they just
wouldn't reject her ever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Too much is riding on her ascension.
Racy.
Yeah. Scene changes, and Poppy is pacing her room, thinking about the conversation she had with Victor, and totally abandoning all of her routinely training session. And I love how Victor knows her so well that he doesn't even try to summon her by knocking at her door to practice. He's just, like, giving her the space. And I'm sure she says that she's sure he knows she's not mad. She's just mulling everything over.
But he knows that she needs that, and that's how she processes things, and he gives that to her. It's, like, really sweet.
Yeah.
He
the willpower
knows her better than herself. Like.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. She ends up spending the entire day contemplating the conversation from the night before, and I love how introspective she is. She's asking herself a million questions. She's really trying to get to the root of how she feels, and I just want to say, we love a self-aware queen, because we just finished a book where the girl did not want to ask herself any questions.
Yep.
And now we have a girl who's not afraid. In fact, she'll spend a whole fucking day asking herself questions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because, I mean, we're keeping track of questions, but only the out loud questions.
Yeah.
But in reading it, I was like, oh my God, like there are so many interior questions. And I also noticed she's not the only one who asks a lot of questions. Like Tawny's in there asking the hard questions. I think they all kind of do ask, when things happen, they're all curious about what's happening, which as a reader is fun because, like, we're getting all these bits of information, but it's just, like, a nice change.
It is, to say the least. Poppy is finally sick of being within the same four walls when she opens her door and finds Rylan, her other guard, stationed outside. And he knows it is, quote-unquote, time. But then he reminds her to put on her veil, and we learn that with the exception of the Duke and Duchess, Tawny, and her guards, no one is allowed to see her without her veil, which I feel like we already learned. I'm not too sure if we did. I just figured I'd note it.
I think she did mention it in the first.
But she also forgot to put on shoes, so girl is all over the place.
I found it funny, though, that she almost leaves without her veil. Like, she has worn this since she was a child. Like, that's weird. No?
I think it just goes to show what, like, a weird headspace she's in.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's the norm for her.
Well, that's the thing. I was like, that's bizarre.
Yeah. As they walk to the gardens, they're interrupted by the famous Lord Mazine. And get ready to hate on a caca face for this book, Elyse, because Lord Mazine sucks.
Yeah.
Poppy informs us that though the Duke hates her for no reason, Lord Mazine just has small d energy and hates her because she laughed at him once when he was bad at playing poker.
I know. It's so gross.
Yeah. Not only that, he attends her quote-unquote lessons with the Duke, which are her punishments.
Yeah.
When Rylan tries to get her away from Lord Mazine, citing the rules such as the maiden cannot linger, Mazine DGAF and insists that they converse, lest the Duke finds out that she's not being amenable. So she follows him to a private alcove where he seems to just be basking in the fact that he has her at his mercy. This guy's just so gross.
He's so gross. I mean, the ick.
So the Duke tells Poppy how much he enjoys her lessons, aka he enjoys watching her get punished, which is even more disgusting. And then he starts touching her chin, her neck, her collarbone, and she has to fight the urge to fight back because obviously she doesn't want to prompt like any reason to get punished. So she takes a step back, he gropes her, And then he's basically just egging her on because he's a nasty piece of shit. And because he enjoys watching her get punished, he just wants to get her punished so that he can enjoy watching her get punished.
Yeah, it's messed up. I did love the mirroring, though, between the scene with Hawke and the scene with Lord Barfface. Because
Barfface.
because the fact that he says, "You wound me," and the way he holds her is exactly the way Hawke did. But the reaction is
so different.
Viscerally different.
Yeah. Good call.
Yeah.
Luckily, they are interrupted by a scream, which is distracting enough that Poppy takes advantage to run away from Lord Mazine, where she meets up with Rylan in the hallway, and they find a servant rushing out of a room. In it, they see a woman lying on a settee, her dress bunched up around her waist, skin chalky, her neck is twisted at an unnatural angle, and she's got deep puncture wounds in her neck.
Dum, dum, dum.
Yeah.
I also thought it was interesting in this moment that Rylan tells her, "You shouldn't see this." Because, I mean, I guess at this point, like, I didn't know what Rylan's role in everything was. So I was like, does he not know what Poppy and Victor do? Because she's seen
No,
worse.
he doesn't.
Which, obviously, he didn't. But I didn't know at that point. Like, I was surprised when he was like, "Oh, you shouldn't see this," and, like, being all protective. I was like, oh, you don't really know her, considering how good friends you are, you know?
Yeah. Okay, dimple count.
None.
Question count.
9?
9.
Yes, that's very exciting. I'm glad that we got the same. I'm like stressing about the question count, guys. There's so many questions, and sometimes I have to reread parts because I'm like, wait, who said it? Was it Poppy? Because there's some parts where it's not clear.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of take it in context. But
Awards?
What is your most romantic?
I don't have a line. I just love the conversation with Victor and how well he knows Poppy, and he calls her out on these thoughts and feelings that she herself had previously had.
I do love that. I wrote, it is a Victor line. "You're as brave as any guard on the rise."
Oh, yeah.
He insults her right after that, but I was like, we're just going to keep the next part.
Love that.
Do you have a funniest?
Yeah. Taking advantage of the distraction, I darted out from behind the curtain instead of unsheathing the dagger and slicing off what I was sure was the Lord's most prized possession.
She shoulda. I wrote, "Like when I saw a spider, I behaved as if it were the size of a horse with the cold calculation of an assassin."
Love that.
I just love that description because, like, a lot of people are afraid of spiders.
Me included.
Yeah. I feel uneasy if, like, I don't like them touching me. If they're in a corner, I'll leave them. But I just love this comparison because we do act like they could kill us with the skill of an assassin.
It's just the, like, creepy, crawly, like, I hate bugs.
Mm-hmm.
I hate all bugs.
That's fair.
I'm a city girl through and through.
Do you have a spiciest?
Yeah, it's not like spicy sassy or spicy spicy. It's kind of like spicy. I don't really know how to describe it. Okay, it's when Victor tells Poppy, because no matter what you do, you're not going to be found unworthy. You will ascend. It's kind of like foreboding.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I love it.
What about you?
I don't have one.
Oh, okay.
So that's it.
Okay, fair enough.
Chapter 6. Poppy and her crew are reeling about the body. It is concluded that it must have been the work of an Atlantean. Poppy then goes in search of any evidence she could find. Her research only proves that there must be an Atlantean in their midst. Rylan and Poppy end the day with their nightly stroll, only to be interrupted by an arrow in Rylan's chest. Oh my god. So Rylan swiftly brings Poppy away from the body, and Poppy's kind of like reflecting in her head about the state of the woman's undress and how that's all anyone will probably talk about, which I thought was worth mentioning.
Me too. I thought it was worth mentioning because I love how one of her main concerns is this woman's dignity. Yeah.
And sadly, like, when women are in situations or victims or whatever, it's always like, well,
what was she wearing?
Well, it's probably her fault. Well, this, and like, we're in a fictional world, but that still is the norm, which sad. But anyway, the castle is now on lockdown, and Tawny is in Poppy's room thinking that it must be a Craven. So she's kind of freaking out. Tawny's really funny. Like, I picture her very, like, flustery and, like, bubbly. And anyway, I like her.
Yeah, I would agree. That's how I would picture her as well. And kind of, like, a little ditzy.
Yeah, a little bit. Like, she's not dumb, but, like, she has that like, side. Yeah. But Poppy states that a Craven leaves 4 bite marks, and this woman only had 2. like a vampire.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, come on, vampire.
Vampire. I just love vampires, guys. I was like thinking about it this week because I haven't read a vampire or vampire-esque thing because I don't want to call them vampires until I know for sure. But I was just thinking back. I was like, man, like this like love of vampire runs deep. Like since I was like a little kid, I was just like watching the little kid vampire movies. And then as a teenager, I was like I just haven't visited them in a while. And I'm really happy to be back in a blood-sucking world. So the woman looked like she was drained of blood, but it was so cleanly done that they're like, it can't be a Craven. And also Poppy noted that her neck was broken. So I just love how in this moment, like Poppy's taking stats of everything and just like laying it all out because it starts to feel like a whodunit, like the way it's written, which you and I both love. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Victor arrives to tell them that the grounds are clear. Poppy then notices that Victor is in pain, so she uses her power on him, or she zeroes in on him to sense if he is in pain, and then uses her power knowing that he's getting a headache. He tends to like get these severe headaches, which sound a lot like migraines because he's sensitive to both light and sound. And it makes him nauseous. And been there. I don't know if you suffer migraines.
I get tension headaches.
Oh, it's true, right?
At least like once a week, and it's really brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get migraines often, but when I do, I'm like throwing up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get nauseous with the tension headaches, and I just curl up into a ball and end up asking Justin to give me like a rub down, and then I'll usually just go to bed, and then like the sleeping will help. And sometimes I call them like tension headache hangovers because sometimes if it's really bad the night before, you wake up with like a little bit of still the tension headache.
Yeah, that sucks.
But you know what? Most of the time it's my fault. If I would just take an Advil when I feel it coming on, I would nip it in the bud. But I've been having these for years, and I'm just like, oh, it won't be so bad, or I'll just like, I'll just relax, or Justin will give me a neck massage and it'll be better, and it never is. And so I just like suffer for no reason. Anyway,
one day you'll learn.
Maybe when I'm a big girl.
Yeah, exactly.
When I'm older.
I did like in this moment we get a mini description of kind of how her power works.
Okay.
So, quote, I opened my senses and immediately felt the sharp pounding ache behind my eyes. I quickly severed the connection, and it was like visualizing a cord connecting me to him being snipped in two. So I just enjoyed the like visual of what that power is, kind of the way we have in Fourth Wing, the visual of being in the archives and the flow of power. It just like helps paint a picture because like we don't have powers. So Poppy uses her power to ease his pain. And then Victor shares that the Duke believes it's a dissenter.
Okay.
The victim, we learn, was a servant named
Melissa.
It's Melissa?
Melissa.
Okay. It's like a flipped version of Melissa. I don't know. And she came from Radiant Row, which we talked about beforehand. And Poppy contemplates taking Tawny's sadness as well, but doesn't, which would make me assume that Tawny doesn't know about the powers.
No, I think it's more like she wanted to sense if Tawny felt like a deep pain as though she knew the girl and it was a personal grief, or whether it was just like a general sadness. And when she sensed that it was just a general sadness that you would have knowing that, you know, a young woman was brutally murdered, she was like, it's not worth it.
Okay.
More like that type of thing. Because as we know from last chapter, she, Poppy, experiences a physical repercussion for the use of her power. So I think she's a little bit more judicious about how she uses it.
That makes sense. So Tawny and Rylan leave, and Victor stays behind, and he brings up that the whole situation with Lord Mazine. So Rylan told him about it, and he asks her, he goes into dad mode, he asks her what happened and if she's okay, and again, we just see how lovely their relationship is. Poppy just kind of lies and brushes it off as if she could handle it, which is like sad. But she goes into internally a description of like the ick that she felt, basically just feeling dirty and gross, but knowing that it wasn't really her fault and she didn't do anything to like gain his attention, but she still feels like dirty and she still feels it's on her somehow, which I just find it so upsetting that like in a world where men feel entitled to a woman's body, when something like this happens unprompted, it's still the woman that carries the guilt and the shame.
Yeah.
And again, it's a fictional world, but mirrors what you know, things that happen in this world too. So it's just really sad. I felt really sad reading that passage.
You read things like so deeply. I'm just like, Poppy, it's not your fault. Get over it. Let's move on.
It's more complicated than that.
No, I know. But it's such like I mean, I won't say it's a small part of the story, but it's so, in the grand scheme of things, such a small part of the story that I'm just like, but I have the benefit of knowing.
Because like I'm still at the beginning, it's like 4 chapters. And then like already we have like a woman, potentially a rape victim. And then now this, and like, there's been a lot of, they've alluded a lot to Poppy's abuse. So I'm just like, it's just very coded in that right now. So, which is not a fun place to be. Anyway, Victor also feels helpless because he can't stop the Lord from doing anything. So like he feels helpless because of his rank and he wants to protect Poppy. And as much as his role is to protect her, he can't protect her to the extent that he wants to. Then they talk about the body and how there seems to have been sexual relations before the kill.
Yeah, but we don't know. They could have been consensual.
Yeah, and that's talked
It's just because you said before that she could have been.
I said potentially.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no,
it's not even reading comprehension; it's auditory comprehension.
But it is. They talk about it, saying like, maybe it's internally. Poppy says it. She's like, it could have been consensual. But like, who knows? Then they reveal that the only person / creature who could be capable of leaving those marks and no mess is an Atlantean. So Poppy thinks the idea of an Atlantean freely entering the castle is truly terrifying. So at the crack of dawn, she decides to get up and go looking for answers.
I love that she's not one to just sit around and wait for shit to happen. Like, she decides she's going to traipse around the castle, find a history book, and then she can kind of educate herself on the situation. I really like that about her.
And this is like, despite being supposed to be locked up and not be seen by anyone, like she still like finds a way around it. She's like, I'm gonna sneak out, I'm gonna use my secret passageways, I'm gonna get up before she knows this castle schedule, like I'm gonna get up before anyone could spot me. She's just resourceful. We like a resourceful girl.
We do.
So yeah, Poppy sneaks out at the crack of dawn looking for answers. She mentions that at sunrise there's no risk of running into the Ascend, which The Ascended. I keep writing ascend. I don't know why. Oh. Like my brain's just deleting
to ascend. It's like the verb to ascend, but the people are the ascended.
Yeah.
Okay.
My brain is just deleting the ed.
Oh.
I guess. I don't know. Which made me wonder if they were nocturnal.
Mayhaps.
The door to the room where the body was found is closed, but nearby is where she normally takes her lessons, and she goes to grab the History of the War of Two Kings and the Kingdom of Solace book. She wanted to read up on the Atlanteans and their descriptions to see if it really does align with everything they suspect. The descriptions only confirm her thoughts, descriptions being what we talked about before. I'm not going to go over it again.
Yeah.
So she does think it is an Atlantean who killed the woman. Oh, she does mention in passing something that I didn't understand, but I wrote it because it feels important, but quote, for some reason the gods hadn't taken any of that into consideration when they initiated the blessing. And this is in reference to the Atlanteans being undetectable and mortals. So like, is she insinuating the Ascended should have been given detection powers?
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, it's so in passing. And I was like, this doesn't make sense, but I'm going to write it down anyway.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you, because this whole passage where she's talking about the gods and she's bringing up the gods, she says, quote, after all, our gods had been their gods at one time, but the gods no longer supported the Atlanteans. So I want you to know what you thought of that.
I wrote, why? Because I don't have anything else to go on, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah, so she goes on to think about how both parties lived an extremely long time, which actually made me want to ask you, would you want to be immortal if it was an option, and what would you do with your time?
Whoa.
It could be a very deep question, and I'm putting you on the spot.
I would do it if I was like Bella Swan. Because Bella Swan, essentially, with the exception of her mom and her dad, who she's, to be honest, not that close with, is going to live her immortality with her whole family and her best friend. So, yeah. Also, they don't kill people. So basically, if I
you're
could,
a no on the killing, you're not for that.
I'm not for that. No, you can. That is on the record, Myriam Gad.
Not
it's a no for me.
That's so funny.
Or I am anti-murder.
Okay. Good to know.
I was going to be like, I am not pro-murder. And I just figured I would be more clear than that. I am anti-murder.
That's great.
How about you?
I mean, I had a bit more time to think about it, but I'm kind of two minds because part of me is like, oh my God, like I could just learn all the things. I would do.
Oh, I didn't even tell you what I would do with my time.
So many. Yeah. So many creative things. I'd want to like learn all the languages. I'd want to like explore so many different art forms. Like
I'd want to travel the world.
Exactly.
Do good. The only thing is though, okay, are we living in like our time with social media? Because I feel like it would literally be impossible to live forever unless we got like facial reconstruction every few years.
No, I think you would just have to not be on social media.
Okay, but like even at that, if you, makes sense.
Yeah. You'd have to be like anti-social media.
Yeah, you'd have to be like really undercover. But then think, okay, I'm running with this, okay?
Yeah.
Let's say you go to a city like London that is covered with CCTV. That CCTV like basically lives forever. So you would have to like permanently hide your face from the CCTV.
I mean, people aren't examining CCTV unless they're looking for someone. So as long
what if
as
I did something that was suspicious at one point?
Just don't do it.
Yeah, I guess.
But then, anyway, the other part of me was definitely thinking about like family and friends and all the people that you love and know now wouldn't be along for the ride. And then...
Yeah, I would only do it if they were along for the ride.
Yeah. There's also like the idea, I guess, that we as humans do die. So we try to fill our lives with all these moments and happy memories. And we do things because we have such a short timeline.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't feel necessarily like the need to do things because you could live forever. Like,
but you'd get bored.
Well, that's what I mean.
So you would fill your time. Just because you live forever doesn't mean you wouldn't fill your time.
Yeah, but I think like your concept of time, like...
Yeah, your concept of time definitely is different. And I think that's why... Ooh, I have to think of the series. What series was it? Oh, it was ACOTAR. In ACOMF, I believe, so spoilers for ACOTAR, Reese, was it Reese or Cassian? Someone says how the change that is required of the Illyrians is so much more difficult because they experience time so differently, being long-lived, long-lived. I see what you're saying about how time feels different when it's infinite.
I just thought it was something interesting to think about.
Yeah. I don't like that question.
It wasn't a question for a final answer. It was just a question for reflection. Anyway, back to the vampire, not vampires.
Okay.
Basically, the Atlanteans do have a lot of vampire-like traits, but Poppy is wondering why an Atlantean would bite, drink from the woman, and then snap her neck, therefore seemingly stopping the spread of the curse.
Right.
So she's just questioning, like, why would that be at play? Like, why?
Poking holes in the narrative. We love it.
Yeah, so I don't even know if she explicitly says it. Does she? She might.
She does.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And then Poppy draws a comparison of the Ascension and the Atlanteans, both turning around the same age of 19. And like you were saying before, how they shared the same gods at one point, but the gods seemingly turned their backs on the Atlanteans. And I'm just like, what happened? But again, we don't know at this, we're so early in the book. Like, we don't even know what the War of Two Kings was. We don't know anything.
Right. Well, I mean, we can surmise that it was between the King of Solus and the King of Atlantia, but other than that, we really don't know much. You're right.
But we don't know what the cause was. We don't know why the Atlanteans are the way they are. We don't, like...
We know nothing.
We know nothing. And then she sneaks into the room where Melissa was found, and...
I wrote she's in Inspector Clouseau mode. Yeah. Because she's, like, entering the room, and she's inspecting the floors and the carpet and the flowers, and, like... Also now Poppy's a botanist because she like smells jasmine, but there's white lilies in the jar or on the vase or whatever. Yeah. And I just want to be like, listen, I mean, I could tell the difference between like a rose and another flower, but I can't pull out these scents. I am just not that sophisticated.
Not even the scent, but like she finds the petal and then she's like, oh, but this isn't, they're both white petals. And she's like, oh, it doesn't belong to this flower.
I mean, now
like,
you could tell. I'm sure
I don't know.
A lily has
know
like...
what a jasmine looks like and what a lily looks like.
That's a fair point.
I know what a lily looks like.
I know what a lily looks like, but I don't know what jasmine flower looks like.
I have to Google it.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, this is just like tying in with what I was saying, like the whodunit vibe, like, which I think was part of why I was so excited. I was like, yes, let's investigate.
Yeah.
But yeah, she doesn't find anything. The CT is gone, the body's gone, but she does find this one petal, and it doesn't belong with the flowers that are in the room. She ends this little chunk investigation with a line that I really liked. So, quote, "What did I believe about truth? That it often could be terrifying, yes, but with truth comes power, and I was never one to hide from the truth." And I was like, yes, you better not be lying to yourself like Violet Sorrengail, because I love this.
Yeah. No, I will say Poppy, I think you're going to like her better than you liked Violet.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, book 1 Violet. Loved.
Book 1 Violet was great.
I stand book 1 Violet.
Yeah, but
book 2 Violet, not so much.
Yeah.
Then Poppy spent much of the day in a room just thinking over everything about Melissa and the body and what happened. And she was questioning why the Duke would lie about the attack and it being a descender. Like, he's blaming it on the descenders. But she kind of surmises that he wouldn't want to spread fear, which makes sense.
Yeah, it's the same reason why he downplays the number of Craven attacks.
Exactly. And then she notes that preparations for the rite are continuing around the castle. Basically, it's like just every other day in the castle right now.
Basically, she's like, nothing will stop this rite from happening.
Yeah. She's like, damn it. Why?
Yeah, but the rite is not her ascension. It's just a party.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a thing leading up to the ascension. Like, it's part of the whole.
Yeah, but it's not part of the process.
The ascension.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Rylan then comes to ask her if she wants to go on their usual evening stroll, and they go to the Queen's Garden, which seems to be a nice escape for Poppy. Mm-hmm. Once she gets there, it's like she's at ease and kind of forgets about everything else going on in her life, so it's a nice reset, which nature can be a nice reset for people. So.
For sure. I love this line that he tells her before they go for their walk. He says, quote, "You don't have to stay in here, not unless that's what you want to do. What happened last night with the poor girl and the Lord has nothing to do with what you find joy in." I really love that.
Yeah, I wrote it too. I love it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm glad you read it because I was going to skip over it. She knows that the fountain in the garden has a statue of a veiled maiden, and there's coins in it, a token to the gods. And she notes the jacaranda tree that hides the crumbling part of the wall that she and Rylan used to escape to Wisher's Grove, which is her and Victor used to escape to Wisher's Grove, which is what you talked about in our world building part. And then they stop in front of these vines, and as the sun goes down, the vines start to bloom with night blooming roses. And this seems to be kind of like their nightly routine as they go and see these roses, and you're experiencing this beautiful moment until she turns to Rylan and there's an arrow protruding from his chest.
NBD.
No big deal. And he just says run, and the chapter ends. And honestly, I was like taken back by it. Like, I was not expecting that to happen right now. Like, I was really shocked.
Well, I told you, this book is a lot darker than the stuff you've been reading.
Yeah.
We already have 2 murders and 2 mercy killings.
Yeah. No, I just didn't see this coming at all. I was
not even 8 chapters in.
But then I did have a moment after, like, as I was finishing up my question count and whatever, I was like, oh, I guess he did have to die, because then how else would Hawke get in? Like, I see why it happened. But in the moment, I was like, wait, what? Why? But the roses. Anyway, dimple count.
0.
Question count.
8.
8.
Yeah,
oh my God.
We're killing it.
Killing it. I'm proud of us. Awards?
Yeah.
Do you have a most romantic?
Yes. I casually placed my hand on the back of Victor's neck as I reached for a small fur quilt. His skin was warm and dry as I thought of the beaches and my mother's laugh. I knew his pain was eased the moment he took a deep, shuddering breath.
Love that. Mine is the Rylan quote you read before.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Do you have a funniest?
Nope, nothing funny in this chapter.
Funny.
It opens and closes with tragedy.
Yeah, lots of death. Mm-hmm. Do you have a spiciest, though?
Ish.
Okay.
Run.
Love that. If I had unsheathed my dagger and used it, there would have been no hope for me. But gods, I wouldn't have felt a drop of guilt over it. Just the tenacity in the line.
Yeah.
Chapter 7. In the wake of Rylan's death, Poppy defends herself from the assailant. She stabs him a couple of times before a whistle sends him retreating. When they face the Duchess, she reiterates Poppy's importance. It's clear that the Dark One is after her, and the kingdom must protect her at all costs.
The action is starting. Unfortunately, Rylan is a casualty of the story to get us moving, but whatever. We honestly didn't even have that long to like fall in love with him and really care. Unless you're you.
No, I liked him though.
Yeah, I mean, me too.
But I'm not like Liam over it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're not devastated by it. Good news is he died pretty much instantly, so we can take comfort in the fact that he didn't suffer. Before she really knows what's going on, a cloakman approaches Poppy and tells her the classic bad guy line, quote, "Do what I say and no one will get hurt." And I love how Poppy isn't some like simpering damsel. She's got enough of her wits about her to be like, no one, and like looking at Rylan, and he's like, okay, like no one else.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was a little comedic relief that I thought was...
Yeah, morbid humor.
Yeah. Anyway, the attacker is ordering Poppy to get up and walk out of here. And so she acts all demure, but she grabs the handle of her dagger and her rage is building. She can't believe that her guard died because of her, despite that literally being his job. And she's thinking that if this guy is an Atlantean or a dissenter, she's as good as dead, because she mentions how in the past when the dissenters or Atlanteans would kidnap someone, it was never for ransom. Like they came back in pieces.
Mm-hmm. I think he's something else.
Yeah?
I think he's a wolven.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Love that theory.
Thanks.
So the attacker, obviously because she's acting, I don't know, cooperatively, the attacker's like, oh good, you're behaving. And then bam, she's attacking him with her dagger. She stabs him in his side once and is about to do it again when he punches her in the jaw. She manages to stab him a second time, but now he's punched her in the head. She's seeing stars, but she doesn't let herself falter. And she gets a good look at her attacker. He's young with dark shaggy hair and he's got pale blue eyes. And TBH, this is like ideal coloring for me. Like I love this. Like my husband is like really white and he's got like light brown hair.
Lighter than yours.
Yeah. It's like kind of ginge, but not really. I used to say that he was ginge. He's not ginge at all, but like it's like a reddish brown and he's got like blue eyes, and I'm Middle Eastern, so I always say like I hope our future children have like the Middle Eastern coloring, but like his eyes, I feel like it would be ideal. And that's what this guy sounds like.
True, actually. Yeah.
Anyway.
Pale luminous blue.
Yeah.
That's how it's described. Which I took note of because I was like, I feel like eye color is always so important. So like if he's part of a group, maybe this is a clue.
Maybe. Anyway. Mans is angry and he's bleeding and he's in pain, but Poppy is not afraid of him. She threatens to stab him once more if he approaches her any further. As they have this absolutely delightful back and forth, they're interrupted by a sharp whistle. Apparently our attacker is being summoned away, and so Poppy is now alone in the garden, and she's fighting her panic. She's focusing on trying to help Rylan, even though I'm sure part of her realizes that he's too far gone. There's literally nothing she can do. Mm-hmm. She also knows that no one can find out that she can fight and that she can defend herself, so she wipes her dagger on Rylan's breeches, and she goes to find guards.
Yeah. He also, before he runs away, because he's so mad he got stabbed, he does say, I don't care what he has planned for you, alluding to a greater power or his master or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, like, the reason I suspected he was a wolven is because literally a whistle calls him off, and we know that the wolven are somehow bonded to the Atlanteans. Uh-huh. Which I just took as a pet-like situation, so I was like, it just...
I see what you're doing here.
That's where my brain went. That's why I think he's a wolven.
Love that.
Yeah.
Luckily, Victor is among the guards that Poppy comes upon, and he just kind of like makes sure she's okay. And then the scene changes, and Poppy is with the Duchess in some sort of receiving room, and the Duchess is trying to get to the bottom of how this happened. Victor explains that it's likely that the culprit came through that area of the wall that we've been talking about all episode. Mm-hmm. And the Duchess's solution is to just cut down all the trees that are hiding this crack. Mm-hmm. Despite Poppy noting that she's pretty sure the Duke and Duchess have known about this crack for a really long time. Mm-hmm. They've just been like careless. Mm-hmm. But I just want to say that the Duchess ordering the trees to be cut down is bad news for us for two reasons. One, it's obviously sad to cut down healthy trees. But also, it's how Victor and Poppy have been sneaking out of the castle. Mm-hmm. So,
but also, it just feels like it's not the trees that let him in. It's the crack. So fix the crack. Like, why are you cutting down the trees, girl? You know? It's weird.
So that you can, like, see the wall better? I don't even know.
Yeah, but fix your wall. If that's really your concern, you know?
So we've heard really terrible things about the Duke, but the Duchess appears to be kind, and it appears that she really cares about Poppy and that she values Poppy more than the trees. Like she says, like, oh, the trees have lived a long life, but you haven't, like that kind of thing. And she also is concerned about her injuries, asking the healer who is there to kind of tend to Poppy's bloody face. And she also wants to make sure that Poppy isn't in any pain. So she asks the healer for like some sort of tonic or whatever. But apparently she doesn't care enough to know that Poppy likes a daily walk in the garden every day? Question mark? Like
Nightly routine.
Yeah, I feel like you live in the same place. Like, how big can this castle really be that you would just never know that that's what she does literally every single day of her life?
Even Lord What's-His-Face knew, not Lord the...
Yeah, Lord Mazine.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the Duchess asks about what happened and Poppy explains, the Duchess concludes that Rylan just wasn't as alert as he should have been, and Victor agrees, citing the fact that Rylan enjoyed their evening strolls pretty much as Poppy did, and in his opinion, had then become too complacent.
Which is, like, I understand, I hear what he's saying. However, Poppy notes that Rylan is on extra high alert at the beginning because of the murder that just happened, and she could see him looking everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, that's not what happened.
I know. But she also, like, can't be seen to defend Rylan too much because she's not supposed to have, like, closer relationships with anybody or, like, that many people. So the Duchess tells Poppy she'll have to inform the Queen about this. And Poppy's main concern is worrying her brother. So she's like, oh, please don't tell Ian, blah, blah, blah. And the Duchess is like, listen, I'm going to tell the Queen. I can't control who the Queen tells after that. Unfortunately, although she is kind, the Duchess cares more about Poppy as a symbol than Poppy as a person, because Poppy's importance is not only as a maiden, but also because what we were saying before, she is tied to hundreds of ascensions. Like hundreds of ascensions hinge on hers happening. The Duchess's concern is that the dissenters are actually trying to stop the ascension. So all this disruption, according to the Duchess, has this like bigger plan.
Yeah, which we still know so little about. Like, we still don't understand, like, why is her ascension important for everyone else's? Like, we don't know the semantics of it all, you know?
Exactly. Turns out the arrow used on Rylan was marked with the Dark One's promise, from blood and ash, we will rise. And literally every time I read that, I get goosebumps. I just think it is so badass.
Yeah.
I just think it's so cool.
Yeah.
Even though we're not supposed to, because obviously the Dark One is evil. But
it's a great tagline. And also, like, I had a moment I was like, because it's the title, you know,
of the book,
like,
From Blood and Ash.
Yeah, every time Scott and I watch a movie or TV show, when they say the title, if they say the title in the thing, we always like say like, take a shot. We don't actually take a shot, but it's just like a game we play. So I was like, take a shot, and I'm like, oh, I'm alone.
That is embarrassing for you.
No, rarely embarrassed. Let's be honest.
I know Elyse sends me this like new trend that's going around on TikTok, and I saw it and I was just like, listen, I will do embarrassing things, but I draw the line there.
That's fine. You're allowed to speak your piece.
Thank you. The chapter ends with the Duchess revealing the hypothesis that the attack on Melissa the day before was by an Atlantean. So now this kind of hypothesis is being more widespread through the castle, and that the Dark One has come for Poppy. She vows to protect her, but that she wouldn't be surprised that the king and queen summoned her to the capital early in anticipation for her ascension.
Which would suck. I mean, I don't actually know. I'm just like enjoying getting to know this territory. Don't whisk me off to another one.
Dimple count.
None.
Question count.
3?
Okay, awards.
I don't have a most romantic.
Okay, I do. It is, at the moment, I didn't care what the man's agenda was. All that mattered was that he killed Rylan, who found the night-blooming roses just as beautiful as I did.
Welp.
Yeah. What's your funniest?
I will bathe in your blood and feast on your entrails. That sounds delightful.
Me too.
Do you have a spicy?
Yeah. I wasn't lucky. I had been prepared.
Nice. Mine is, it was coming out of him fast. I must have hit something vital. Good.
See, it's kind of that same feeling.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Every time like I have that feeling, do you remember the scene in Princess Diaries 2, A Royal Engagement, where she is like supposed to meet the queen, but the queen is in Parliament, and so she's going through like the secret passageways, and like she pulls on like the head statue, and she listens, and then in Parliament, when they're saying that Princess Mia has to marry before she can become queen, and the queen is like, I've been a queen without a man by my side, like my granddaughter will do blah, blah, blah. And then Mia just goes, yeah! And it just like echoes, and everyone in Parliament is like,
what?
Yeah, that's literally what like plays in my mind every time.
That's so funny. Chapter 8?
Yeah.
Poppy is feeling guilt over Rylan's death. The Crown and the guards now all want to heighten safety measures around Poppy. Despite protests, Poppy attends Rylan's funeral, and as Victor goes to pay his respects, Hawke steps in to keep watch.
Yes! I was missing him. We've been like 3 chapters without him. More than that.
I like didn't forget about him, but I momentarily forgot about him.
He's impossible to forget.
But there was so much else going on that I was like, my brain was trying to like.
Yeah, but she. Oh no, I think it's in this chapter that she thinks about him again. She hadn't thought about him in the other chapters.
She mentions him with Lord Mazine in the chapter.
Yeah,
like,
true.
He is there, but like I did have a moment of like, oh yeah, this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's back. Okay.
Yeah.
So Poppy, Victor, and Tawny are walking back to her room, discussing what went on in the garden. They concluded that the archer might have been a dissenter, and that the he that was referenced might have been the Dark One. Rylan will be put to rest likely in the morning, but Poppy can't attend. The Ascended and the lords and ladies in wait should not be expected to go to a guard's funeral. But Poppy says she doesn't care. Like, Rylan was her guard and one of her best friends. She doesn't care what the Duke will do. She'll go. I feel like there's a lot of moments now already that she's like, I don't care what the Duke does. But then so many alludements to how bad the punishment is from the Duke. It's weird that she seems
it's inconsistent.
So defiant. Anyway, she's feeling guilty and responsible, and she wants to show up for her friend. So Victor tells her it's not her fault, and Rylan was just doing his duty. And he even goes as far as to tell her that when his time comes, if he dies in duty, it will not be her fault, which I was just like...
But I mean, come on, it kind of is. His job is to guard you with your life.
But it's not like... It's not her choice. It's nothing she did.
No.
It's not her direct fault. It's just they're both victims of circumstance.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, I would still feel guilty in her shoes as well. Don't get me wrong. But he continues to reassure her that it wasn't her fault and that Rylan was a good guard. Though he does reiterate that he's become too complacent. And I was just like, meh.
But it's true. I mean, I think you can't really fault him for it. I think it's just human nature. Mm-hmm. They say, for example, that most car accidents happen within like a few blocks of your house because you're so comfortable there that you kind of pay less attention or whatever. So I think it is kind of something like that. This is a part of their routine. They always would go watch the night blooming roses. So it's normal that he felt safe.
Yeah, it was their safe space, right?
Yeah.
They get to her chamber, and before Victor leaves, Poppy asks, quote, the group the Duchess spoke about, do you know who they are? But he doesn't. He does think, though, that he should have been privy to all the information right away if Atlanteans were really suspected. So he was kind of like taken back. And I agree. If he's the main guard and she's the prized possession, why isn't he in the loop?
Yeah.
It's weird. Poppy then takes a bath, trying to erase the image of Rylan from her mind. And she is then, after her bath, staring at herself in the mirror and analyzing her features. So we actually get some info as to what this girl looks like. Mm-hmm. The queen had once told her that except for her eye color, she was a spitting image of her mother. The green eyes came from her father, whereas her mother's were brown.
It's giving Harry Potter. You look like your father,
true.
except you have my mother's eyes. I know.
That's true. I didn't even draw that comparison.
Immediately I got it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I can't believe I didn't think of it.
Yeah, I can't believe that either.
She then describes her eyes and her mouth as too large for her face, but the queen always told her that she was pretty.
But also, when are large eyes and large like mouth/lips a bad thing?
When you're an insecure teenager.
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, I agree.
Like,
I thought that too. I was like, oh, poor you.
Yeah, like women literally get their lips done so their mouth appears bigger.
I know.
And get like lash extensions or lash lifts or whatever to make their eyes look bigger, or do makeup a certain way to make their eyes look bigger. So you know what, Poppy? I don't feel bad for you.
I know. In reading that, I was like,
and you've got
boo.
red hair and green eyes. Boo-hoo.
You're okay.
Yeah.
But she does also have scars.
Yes.
So she describes kind of like how the scars all cut up her face, which I had forgotten were there.
Well, it's only half her face.
Yeah.
And we didn't really know about them being there, in fairness. We know that in last week's episode, we talk about how the Duke calls her face like a part.
Such a shame.
Yeah, like a tragedy or something. So we know that she's marred somehow, but we don't really know all that much.
I guess she talks about the scars on her legs because she's afraid of him touching them. And then she talks about not wanting to take off the mask. So I guess she alludes to it, but we actually get a full description of them, which I didn't write down. Sorry, guys. But it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, it's half her body.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Her most recent injuries, though, are almost completely healed thanks to whatever the healer had applied to them. We then learn that Poppy's mother was close to the queen. The queen even granted her permission to refuse ascension because her mother had fallen in love with her father, who was not a lord. So she chose love over the blessing of the gods.
Aww.
I know, but she was the first and last to ever do so, which might tie into the whole Craven attack way back in the day. Who knows? The queen does say that if her mother had ascended, she would still be here. So she believes that she would not have died of the attack.
Uh-huh.
But Poppy doesn't really like that line of thinking and thinks it doesn't really matter because if she had ascended, she wouldn't have been with her father and Poppy and her brother wouldn't have been born. So
Exactly.
she also says that, quote, that night, the mist came for them. So I was just like, okay, so this must be the night that she got marred and
Yes.
the mist came for them. Why did the mist come for them? Why is the Craven and or Dark One after Poppy? Were they after Poppy? Were they after the parents? Like what? Anyway, I just had so many questions, which you just said we only find out over the course of the next
Yeah, like we're going to get
series,
answers
so.
slowly but surely, and we're going to think that we're going to be satisfied with those answers, and then we're just going to get more and more and more. But
I love that.
Yeah. Remember, though, that the mist is like the precursor for the Craven.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's why I was wondering, like, why, obviously, this was like an attack to get to whether it was Poppy, whether it was her entire family, just her parents, also giving Harry Potter.
Well, we have a chosen one, so it's kind of the same trope.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm killing it today with my observations, aren't
I?
If I may say so myself, besties.
Anyway, Poppy is determined not to let the Dark One have her. Then Tawny knocks at the door, also unable to sleep, and she sneaks into bed with Poppy, and they kind of have like this like late night chat, and it was just giving like sleepover vibes, like hiding under the covers and chatting. Tawny can't wrap her head around the fact that she saw Melissa and Rylan not hours before their death, and it all happened so quickly. And they talk about how much they like Rylan, and then the conversation turns to the Dark One. Tawny describes him as being like the boogeyman, that she never really thought he was real, but it's just this stuff of legends, and now he's kind of proving to be real, and which is scary. She then says that she wishes she could have liked to be there, but like truly glad she wasn't, because she thinks, in reference to when Rylan died, because she thinks that she would have been useless and just shrieking. But Poppy tells her, like, no, girl, like, I've trained you to use a blade. I believe that you could fight. But Tawny brings up a good point that being shown how to use a blade and actually putting it into practice are two very different things.
Yeah, for sure.
Some people are just not good in a crisis.
I am one of those people.
Yeah.
I'm good. Like, if we are living a stressful situation, but the stress is like not acute in the sense that the general situation is stressful, I handle it better than Justin. Like, I don't know, if we're going through like a rough time with work or with our families or when we were in school together, like that stress is a stress that I can handle better. But if we are literally in a crisis, like something happened to the dog or when I hurt my head, I shut down and become stupid, and he swoops in and takes control. Yeah. I feel like that's a really good balance that we can strike, because where one person is strong where the other one is weak, and vice versa.
I love that.
That was my story time.
I love that. Tawny then asks about moving to the capital. So if Poppy were truly in danger, like they wouldn't hesitate to move her. But worse, the queen could actually petition the gods to move up the ascension, which is scary. I mean, for Poppy, because we know she doesn't want the ascension. And I didn't know that was a possibility.
Anything is a possibility.
Right yeah.
It's a book.
It's a book. But I was like, gasp. Then early in the morning, they are at the temples of Rahar and Ione for Rylan's funeral. Poppy does go. She doesn't care what Victor has to say or what anyone else has to say because it's important to her. And I love that for her.
I love that too, to a degree, because she does realize later on when it comes time to light the funeral pyre that her being there is actually an impediment to Victor grieving properly and like properly paying his respects.
Because he feels responsible for her.
Yeah. So I feel like, I mean, and it's totally normal. It's a little bit of selfishness. It's a little bit of naivety or immaturity to think that she can just go and pay her respects because it's important to her, and she doesn't really think about the consequences on other people.
That's fair. I do think, though, that she deserves the right to pay her respects as much as Victor does. But
I disagree.
Okay.
I don't think it's as much as Victor, because Victor and Rylan would have had a much different relationship than she would have had with Rylan. Her relationship with Rylan, like, yeah, she says he's her friend, but first and foremost, he's her guard. And there's always going to be that barrier between them. Whereas at the end of the day, well, I mean, I guess there isn't really an end of the day for him and for Rylan and Victor, but they, on like days off or I don't know, whatever, like,
but we don't
in
know.
In a different context, like they would be able to relate to each other on a very different level than she would ever be able to relate to Rylan. She can relate to Victor on a different level because Victor like spends this other time with her and has taught her, and they like have their own thing going on. But like at the end of the day, I just think that among soldiers or among guards, like there would just be a different relationship. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Do you feel that way about Tawny?
What do you mean?
Well, Tawny is her friend, but also primarily is her lady in wait.
Well, yeah, I mean, she says it in the first chunk of chapters we did in episode 1, and she will continue to say this through the whole book. She is never fully sure that her friendship with Tawny is genuine. Like, she doesn't know if Tawny is like nice to her and hangs out with her because she enjoys it, or if because it's her job.
Sad. So she's at the funeral. She does keep to the back, though, out of respect for Rylan's fellow brother in arms. And she watches as the priest pours oil and salt on the body, preparing it to be burnt. Which, if you don't want it turning into a vampire, that's what you would do. I'm just gonna say. Then the commander of the Royal Guard, Griffith Jansen, turns to Victor, holding the torch to give him the honor of setting Rylan's pyre ablaze, which I thought was really lovely. And in that moment is what you just said. Poppy realizes, like, oh shit, I'm impeding Victor from being able to do that without worrying about me. And she feels kind of guilty about it.
But then
what do we hear? A deep voice that Poppy describes as one that shouldn't be familiar, but was. And whose voice is it?
Hawke friggin' Flynn.
He says, I've got her.
Oh.
Instant butterflies. Poppy begins thinking of the night and the red pearl, kind of wishing she had stayed. And Victor asks him, do you? To which Hawke responds, with my sword and with my life.
Love that.
But it's not the kind of sword Poppy wants. Because that dipping stomach feeling is back. The girl has got it bad. Victor goes into dad mode, sizing up Hawke, but the commander did tell him once that Hawke was one of the best in the Rise.
Right.
And then it's really funny because it's like I liked reading this part, but it could potentially be really cheesy, like if you just take a step back and read it, because Hawke's like, I'm good at what I do. And Victor's like, what is that?
Killing.
Yeah, it's so bad, but like I also enjoyed it.
Yeah. I found it, like, the way I read it was like a little bit more matter of fact, so it wasn't cheesy.
Oh, yeah. I guess my brain just like makes everything cheesy.
That's a you problem.
My brain loves camp, so everything's campy in my brain when I read, I guess. That's why I ruined the throne scene.
Yep.
There you go. Victor ensures Hawke understands that Poppy's importance, to which Hawke replies he knows what he stands beside. Then she sneaks a peek at Hawke, and she describes his features, and you could just feel like how bad this girl has it for him. And it's funny because you had asked me last week if I liked the way she describes Hawke, and I was like, yeah, I do, but like I didn't really like think about it. But in reading this passage, I was like, oh, I understand why you asked me that now, because it is very much like the way violence describes Xaden. And yeah, I do. I like it because I think the way these women are describing these men is just, it's very poetic and very romantic. And I like love that type of language, poetic romantic language, especially when you're describing someone. So yes, I do. Poppy then questions if he recognizes her and wonders if him stepping up right now is a move for the now open spot in the Royal Guard, because someone needs to replace Rylan. And it would be a good move on his part if he wants to move up in ranks. Then she remembered why she's actually there and watches Victor light the pyre. Hawke then tells her that she is doing Rylan and all of them an honor by being there. See, he thinks it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I just think that, like, if she really wanted to be there, she shouldn't have, like, sprung it on Victor. Mm-hmm. Like, they should have come up with a plan.
Yeah.
So that Victor and her could both.
Yeah. They could have preemptively had a guard with her and all that
type
stuff.
of thing.
Yeah, totally. And as she turns to face him, he immediately goes to the corner of her mouth where it was still a bit inflamed and says, "You were hurt. You could be assured that it will never happen again." And I am ready for this touch her and die energy.
Love it.
And that's it.
Amazing.
So there's no dimple count.
But there's a mention of
a lack of dimple, and I wasn't sure if we wanted to count that.
I don't know.
Because it's still mentioning the dimple.
I know.
So I think we should count it.
Okay, let's count it.
Okay. Do you want to mark it?
Sure.
And question count, I had 2.
I had 3.
Okay.
Should we do a quick fact check?
So, ladies and gentlemen, it is 3. And it is time for the last awards of the week. Do you have a most romantic?
I just thought that even though I kind of dissed it a little, I do like that Poppy insisted on being at Rylan's funeral and, her presence there, what it meant to everyone.
Yeah.
I thought that
Mine
was beautiful.
A line about that. She said, "He was my personal guard and he was a friend. I don't care what's done and not done. I want to be there for Rylan."
I think I'd put that initially as my most romantic line, and then I just wanted to encapsulate the entire sentiment
Of it all, yeah.
Yeah. Funniest?
You would have defended yourself. I've seen how vicious you get when there's only one sweet cake left.
Mine's also a Tawny and Poppy line. It's, "I keep thinking about everything and I wasn't even there. I can't imagine what's going on in your head. Actually, probably something that involves bloody vengeance." That's not entirely untrue. This is my shocked face.
Yeah, I like their dynamic.
Yeah, me too. Do you have a spiciest?
He rarely approves of anything. This can be another thing he could add to the ever-growing list that contains all the ways I've disappointed him. Which is Poppy talking about the Duke.
Okay. Mine is, "You were hurt. You can be assured that will never happen again." Oh my goodness. I love you, Hawke Flynn.
I almost called him Flynn Rider.
What's that from?
Tangled.
Oh.
It's like the same name, different font. I was just like, wait, not Flynn Rider.
Also, there's a character in Crescent City called Tristan Flynn.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
All right, besties. For next week, please read chapters 9, 10, 11, 12. Mm-hmm. Took me a second. I had to do that.
The 4 is throwing us off.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Please rate this podcast and leave us a review. It'll help other people find us. If you haven't already, we encourage you to set new episodes to download so that you are sure to be up to date. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, our Amazon storefront is open and waiting for your shopping needs. We have some books that we love, our favorite things, and more. You can follow us on Instagram at BookBoundPod and on TikTok at Book Bound Besties. Please tag us in any reactions that you may have to both From Blood and Ash or the Empyrean series. Please share that you're listening to this episode to your stories or with your friends. Like we've been saying, we have not found a deep dive into From Blood and Ash before, so
yeah, let's get the word out there.
Yeah, for sure. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can email us at bookboundpod@gmail.com. Let's get to reading.